Hi, everyone. I never thought I'd be one of those people posting on Reddit about heartbreak or betrayal, but here I am. My name's Daniel, 34 years old now, but the story I'm about to tell started when I was 29. Back then, I thought I had everything figured out. A beautiful wife named Emily, a little daughter named Grace, and a small home in the suburbs of Portland. I worked as an electrical engineer. Emily was a part-time teacher. We weren't rich, but we were comfortable. We laughed a lot. We dreamed together. If someone had asked me to define happiness, I would have described us. I remember the little things most, waking up on Saturday mornings to Emily making pancakes, Grace running around the kitchen in her pajamas, her curly hair bouncing as she giggled. I'd wrap my arms around Emily while she cooked and whisper, "I love you." And she'd smile without even turning around, like she'd heard it 1,000 times, but still loved it. That's what made what came later so unbearable, because I never saw it coming. It started small, the way these things usually do. Emily began acting distant. She'd come home later from work, said she was staying late to help one of her students who was falling behind. At first, I didn't think twice. Emily was the kind of woman who cared about everyone. It made sense. But then she started taking her phone everywhere, even to the bathroom. And when she texted, she'd tilt the screen away just slightly. I noticed it, but I didn't want to believe it meant anything. One evening, while we were watching a movie, her phone buzzed. She grabbed it fast. Too fast. I asked, half joking, "Who's that? Your secret admirer?" She laughed, but her laugh didn't sound right. It was forced, hollow. I should have said something then. But instead, I smiled and looked back at the TV, pretending I didn't feel my stomach tighten. Weeks went by, and one night I got home from work earlier than usual. Emily wasn't there. Grace was with my mom for the weekend, so I decided to surprise Emily with dinner. I ordered her favorite Thai food and waited. She texted around 8 p.m. "Sorry, babe, running late. We're finishing up grading papers. Don't wait up." But something in me, I don't know, something told me not to listen. I opened the location sharing app we used to have for safety reasons. She didn't know I still had access to it. Her phone's dot wasn't at the school. It was at a hotel. My heart dropped. I sat there for what felt like hours, staring at the little blue dot on my phone screen. Then, without even realizing it, I grabbed my keys and drove. It was raining. I remember the sound of the drops hitting the windshield like tiny hammers. My chest felt tight, like something inside was tearing apart. When I got to the hotel, I parked across the street. I told myself maybe it wasn't what I thought. Maybe it was some kind of mistake. But deep down, I knew. I walked into the lobby and asked the receptionist, trying to keep my voice calm, "Hi, I'm looking for my wife." "Emily Carter." She said she'd be meeting a coworker here. The woman hesitated. Then she said, "Oh yes, Mrs. Carter checked in about an hour ago. Room 214. Checked in, not meeting someone, not passing through. Checked in. I thanked her, but I don't remember walking up the stairs. My body moved on its own. My mind was screaming, but my heart was silent. At the door, I heard voices. A man's laugh. Emily's voice. And then, silence. I knocked once, no answer. I knocked again, harder this time. Then the door opened, and there she was, wearing a robe, her hair messy, her face pale as snow. Behind her, a man, shirtless, stood frozen. "Daniel," she whispered, how did you—" I didn't let her finish. I just stared at her, at the woman I had loved more than anything in the world, at the stranger standing behind her. She started, but I walked away before she could invent the lie. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I just walked out. I heard her calling after me, but her voice sounded distant, like I was underwater. I got into my car and sat there in silence. The rain kept falling. I wanted to scream, to break something, but instead, I just stared out the window, shaking. That's when I realized the world doesn't end with a bang. It ends quietly, in the parking lot of a cheap hotel, while the person you love stands on a balcony watching you drive away. That night, I packed a bag. I left a note for her. I hope he was worth it. Take care of Grace. Then I drove away. No destination, just away. For weeks, I lived out of my car, parking near rest stops or motels. I didn't call anyone, didn't answer texts. I just existed. I couldn't even look at photos of my daughter without breaking down. My mother tried to reach me, but I ignored her too. I was angry at everyone, at Emily, at myself, at the universe, because I had given my everything to that woman, and she destroyed it in one night. I don't remember the exact day I decided to leave for good, but I remember waking up in my car somewhere in Nevada and realizing there was nothing left for me back home. So I kept driving. After I left, I didn't really have a plan. I just kept driving until the gas tank ran low and my mind went numb. Eventually, I ended up in Arizona, a random town outside Flagstaff. It wasn't special. It was quiet. And that's exactly what I needed. I found a small apartment, if you could even call it that. It was one room, barely big enough for a bed, a microwave, and a chair that looked like it had survived a war. But it was mine. No memories, no ghosts, no Emily. At first, I told myself I'd stay only a few weeks, maybe a month, just to clear my head. But days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months, and before I knew it, years had passed. I found work as a mechanic. It wasn't glamorous, but I liked it. The noise of the shop drowned out the noise in my head. Fixing engines gave me a strange kind of peace. Like, maybe if I could fix broken things, I could fix myself too. The guys at work didn't ask too many questions. They called me Dan and thought I was just another quiet dude with a past he didn't want to talk about. And they were right. Most nights, I'd sit outside the shop after closing, beer in hand, staring at the desert horizon. The sunsets there were brutal, too beautiful for someone who felt so empty. Sometimes I'd think about Grace. She would have been 6 by then. I wondered if she still remembered me, if she still called me Daddy. But every time I thought about reaching out, I remembered Emily's face in that hotel doorway, and I stopped myself. You see, betrayal doesn't just break your heart, it rewires it. It makes you question everything you thought you knew about love, trust, and even yourself. For the first year, I felt nothing. No joy, no anger, just emptiness. I went to work, came home, slept, repeat. But in the second year, something shifted. I started talking to people again, a little. There was this older guy at the shop, Mike, who kind of took me under his wing. He didn't pry, but he had this way of saying the right thing at the right time. One night, after a few beers, he said, "You can run from your pain all you want, kid, but it'll catch up eventually. It always does." I laughed it off back then, but now I realize he was right. Eventually, I started volunteering at a local youth garage program, teaching high school kids how to fix cars. It gave me purpose, and oddly enough, it made me feel closer to Grace. Like maybe I could be some kind of father figure, even if not to my own child. There was one kid, Tyler, who reminded me of her. Same bright eyes, same curiosity. He'd always ask questions, always eager to learn. One day he asked, "Hey Dan, you got kids?" The question hit me harder than I expected. I hesitated, then forced a smile. "I used to," I said. He frowned. "Used to? What happened?" I looked down at the wrench in my hand and said softly, "Life happened, kid." Life happened. He didn't ask again, but I could tell he understood more than he let on. 5 years went by like that. I'd built a routine, a new identity. People in town knew me as Dan the mechanic, not Daniel, the guy whose wife cheated. And that was enough. Or at least, I thought it was. But life has this cruel way of reminding you that the past doesn't disappear. It just hides until it's ready to strike again. It was late October when I got the call. My father had passed away. We hadn't talked much since I left. He'd tried to reach out, sent me letters, but I never answered. I told myself it was better that way, that I was protecting myself. But deep down, I knew I was just running. The funeral was in Portland. Going back there felt like walking into a graveyard of old memories. But I could not go. He was my dad, and I owed him that much. So I packed a small bag, closed the shop early, and hit the road again. The same highway I'd taken 5 years before. Only this time, I wasn't escaping. I was confronting what I'd left behind. The closer I got to my old neighborhood, the heavier my chest felt. Every street, every store, every tree brought memories I didn't want to face. The coffee shop where Emily and I had our first date. The park where Grace took her first steps. It all looked the same. except me. I was the one who'd aged, hardened, changed. The funeral was small, mostly family and a few old neighbors. I stood near the back, not really talking to anyone. I could feel their eyes on me, the son who disappeared without a word. After the service, my mother came up to me. She looked older, weaker, but her eyes were still kind. "You look tired, Danny," she said softly. "It's been a long few years," I replied. We sat in silence for a bit before she said something that froze me. "Emily wanted to come, but she thought it might upset you." My heart skipped. I hadn't heard her name spoken out loud in years. I didn't know how to respond. So I just nodded. "It's better this way," I said quietly. But was it? That night, I stayed at a motel near town. I couldn't bring myself to drive past my old house. It felt like sacred ground I didn't deserve to step on. But fate had other plans. The next morning, I stopped at a gas station before heading out of town. And that's when it happened. I heard laughter. A child's laughter, high-pitched, carefree, familiar. I turned around, and there he was. A little boy, maybe 5 years old, playing near the soda machine, dark brown hair, green eyes, my eyes. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. It was like looking into a mirror, a smaller, innocent version of myself. Then I heard a woman's voice. "Ethan! Stay close, honey." And when I turned toward her, my heart stopped. Emily. She froze when she saw me. Her face went pale, and for a second, neither of us moved. It felt like the entire world held its breath. Then the little boy looked up at her and asked, "Mommy, who's that man?" Emily hesitated. Her lips trembled. And then she whispered, almost to herself, That's your father." My entire world shifted. It was like someone had taken the ground from beneath me. I couldn't speak, couldn't think. Just stared at the boy, my son, a child I never knew existed. For a few seconds, I thought I was dreaming. I just stood there at that gas station, frozen, staring at them. Emily was holding a small paper bag, the kind you get when you buy snacks for a trip. The boy, my son, was gripping her hand, looking up at me with innocent curiosity. He didn't know. He didn't know who I was, but I knew. Every instinct, every cell in my body screamed it. "Emily," I finally managed to say. My voice cracked. It barely came out as more than a whisper. She looked like she'd seen a ghost. Maybe she had. "Daniel," she said softly, almost like she didn't believe I was real. Her eyes filled with tears instantly. For a few seconds, none of us spoke, just silence, and the sound of passing cars. Then, without thinking, I took a step closer. The boy looked up at me and smiled. He had that same crooked half smile I used to have as a kid. God, it hit me like a punch to the chest. What's going on?" I asked. I didn't even know what I was asking. About the boy, about the past, about everything. I just needed her to say something, anything, to make sense of what I was seeing. Emily swallowed hard. I didn't think I'd ever see you again," she said. "I thought you were gone for good." "I was gone," I said, "but apparently not enough to miss 5 years of my son's life." Her eyes widened. People were walking by, glancing at us. It must have looked like some kind of scene from a movie. Two broken people colliding in public, holding back years of pain. Can we talk?" she said quietly. I hesitated. Every part of me wanted to walk away, to run, like I always did. But then the boy tugged on her sleeve. "Mommy, can we go home?" That one word, Mommy, cut deeper than anything else. Because once it had been our daughter saying it, and now there was another child, mine, but not really mine, calling her that. I nodded slowly. "Yeah, we need to talk." We met later that afternoon at a park near the edge of town, the same one where Grace used to play. The memories hit me hard. I half expected to see my little girl running across the grass again, chasing butterflies. But instead, it was Ethan. That's what she said his name was. Ethan. He ran ahead of us while we sat on a bench under the old oak tree. For a while, we just watched him play. Neither of us spoke. The silence between us felt like a living thing. Thick, heavy, impossible to escape. Finally, I broke it. "Is he mine?" She didn't answer right away. Tears filled her eyes again, and she nodded slowly. Yes, he's yours, Daniel. I felt my chest tighten. I wasn't sure whether to cry, laugh, or scream. Instead, I just sat there, numb. Why didn't you tell me? I asked. My voice was sharper than I intended. Why didn't you call me, Emily? I had a right to know. She turned toward me, her voice trembling. I tried. You disappeared. I called your mom, your old job, even your friends. No one knew where you went. Her hands were shaking. I found out I was pregnant 3 weeks after you left. I didn't even know how to reach you. I stared at her, struggling to process everything. Part of me wanted to believe her, but another part, the broken, bitter part, couldn't let go of the image of her in that hotel room. So what, you just raised him without me? Pretended I didn't exist? She shook her head. I didn't pretend. I told him about you, just not your name. I said his father loved him but had to go away. Her voice cracked. I didn't want him growing up thinking he wasn't wanted. That one sentence shattered me. I looked at Ethan, chasing a red ball across the grass, laughing like the world was perfect. He didn't know about betrayal or pain or loss. He just knew joy, and I realized I had missed all of it. His first words, his first steps, his first everything. 5 years. 5 years of moments I could never get back. I wanted to tell you, she whispered, but every letter I sent came back. Every number I called didn't work. After a while, I thought, maybe you just didn't want to be found. That cut deeper than anything, because in some twisted way, maybe she was right. Maybe I hadn't wanted to be found. I had built my new life on running away, and now here was the proof of what I'd lost because of it. We sat there in silence again. I watched Ethan run up to the swing set and call out, Mom! Dad! Look at me! The word dad hit like lightning. He said it so naturally, like it had always been true, like he had always known. Emily looked at me, her eyes wide. He's never called anyone that before, she whispered. I didn't teach him that word. Something inside me broke then. I walked over to the swings, and Ethan grinned up at me. Push me, Daddy, he said. My throat tightened, but I nodded, and I pushed him, slowly, gently, watching his laughter fill the air. For the first time in years, I felt something. Not happiness, not forgiveness, just life. Something real. When we left the park, Emily asked if I wanted to come by the house. The same house. The one I had left behind all those years ago. At first, I didn't want to, but something inside me needed to see it again. Needed to close that chapter properly. When we pulled up, everything looked almost the same. The same blue shutters. The same porch swing. But there was a small difference. A new tree planted in the yard. Ethan's tree, she said. They planted it when he was born. Inside, the house smelled different. New furniture, new photos. But there was one picture on the mantel that stopped me cold. It was Emily, Grace, and Ethan. Grace was taller now, older, beautiful, with Emily's eyes. And next to her was a little boy who didn't even know he'd been missing a father. Grace still remembers you, Emily said quietly. She asks about you sometimes. My voice was barely a whisper. What does she say? She says she hopes you're happy, she replied, and that maybe, someday, you'll come home. We sat at the kitchen table after Ethan went to bed. It was the same table where we used to have breakfast, where Grace learned to draw, where we fought and made up 100 times. Emily looked at me with tears in her eyes. I know you hate me, Daniel, and I don't blame you. I made the worst mistake of my life that night, but please believe me, I never stopped loving you. I didn't know what to say. 5 years of pain doesn't disappear with one apology, but there was truth in her eyes, raw, broken truth. I'm not sure I can forgive you, I said slowly, but I think I'm ready to stop hating you. She nodded, crying silently, and for the first time in years, we sat together in peace. Before I left that night, I stood in Ethan's doorway. He was asleep, holding a small toy car in his hand. The nightlight cast a soft glow across his face. He looked so peaceful, so pure. I whispered, I'm sorry I wasn't here, buddy, but I'm here now, and I'm not going anywhere again. I didn't know what the future would look like, whether Emily and I could rebuild anything, or if I'd just be part of my kids' lives in whatever way they'd let me. But for the first time in 5 years, I wasn't running anymore. I had stopped, and maybe that was enough. I didn't sleep much that night. I lay in that motel bed staring at the ceiling, my mind replaying every moment from the past 5 years. Every choice, every mistake, every second I could never take back. Meeting Ethan had cracked something open inside me, something I thought was long dead. But now, all those feelings were alive again. Guilt, love, confusion, regret. I kept hearing his voice in my head. "Push me, Daddy." 2 words that broke me completely, and somehow healed me at the same time. The next morning, I went back to the cemetery to visit my father's grave. I hadn't really said goodbye at the funeral. Too many emotions, too much noise. But now, it was just me, the gray sky, and a cool October wind. I stood there, staring at the stone, tracing the letters of his name with my fingers. "Hey, Dad," I said quietly. "I really screwed things up, huh?" My voice cracked. I walked away from everything, from my family, from Grace, from a son I didn't even know existed. And now, I don't even know who I am anymore. The wind rustled the trees, and for a second I could almost hear his voice. That calm, steady tone he always used when I was a kid. "It's never too late to come home, son." And maybe it wasn't. Later that day, Emily called. She asked if I'd like to come over for dinner, just a small family meal. Grace wanted to see me, she said. Grace. Even hearing her name out loud again made my heart twist. When I showed up that evening, she was already waiting on the porch. She looked so grown up, 12 now, maybe 13. But the moment she saw me, she ran straight into my arms. "Daddy!" That one word. I didn't know whether to cry or smile, so I did both. I held her like I'd never let go again. "I missed you," she whispered. "I missed you too, sweetheart," I said, my voice trembling. Ethan peeked out from behind the door, clutching a stuffed dinosaur. He smiled shyly, and Grace grabbed his hand. "Ethan, this is Daddy," she said proudly. He giggled and waved, and for a moment, standing there on that porch, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Like maybe, just maybe, I still belonged. Dinner was quiet but warm. Grace kept telling me stories from school. Ethan talked about his toy cars. Emily mostly listened, smiling softly. It felt normal, like the past had never happened. But after the kids went to bed, Emily asked me to stay a little longer. She said there was something she needed to tell me. She sat across from me at the kitchen table, the same place we'd had 1,000 conversations, good and bad. Her hands trembled as she spoke. "Daniel, there's something I should have told you a long time ago." About that night, my chest tightened. "The hotel?" She nodded slowly. "Yes, I know what you think happened, and you're right. But not completely." I frowned. "What do you mean?" Tears filled her eyes. "The man you saw that night. His name was Mark. He was a co-worker. We'd been spending time together after school, helping a student who was struggling. It started innocent. But I was lonely, Daniel. You were working all the time. We barely talked. And I made the worst decision of my life. I invited him for a drink to talk, but it got out of hand. One kiss. That's all it was. Just one kiss. And then you knocked on the door. I stared at her, trying to process it. "One kiss?" I said, disbelief heavy in my voice. She nodded, crying. "He wasn't staying with me. He was helping me through a panic attack. I'd been crying. You saw him without a shirt because he gave me his jacket. It doesn't matter. I still betrayed you. I know that. I crossed a line. But it wasn't what you thought. It never was." I sat there, stunned, 5 years of hatred, guilt, and pain, all built on something I hadn't even understood. "I tried to explain," she continued through tears. "I called you. I wrote you letters, but you never answered. And when I found out I was pregnant, I thought you'd never believe me." She took a deep breath. "I didn't want Ethan to grow up in that storm. I just wanted to protect him." I leaned back, my head spinning. All the anger, all the resentment, it suddenly felt empty. Because the truth was, I hadn't just been a victim. I'd been a coward too. I'd run when things got hard. I never gave her a chance to explain. And in the process, I missed my son's entire childhood. After a long silence, I said softly, "I don't know if I can forgive everything that happened, Emily, but I'm sorry too." She looked up, surprised. For what? For leaving. For not fighting for us. For letting one night destroy everything we built. She reached across the table and took my hand. Maybe it was just instinct, or maybe it was something deeper that never truly died. "You came back," she whispered. "That's what matters." That night, when I left, Ethan woke up and wandered into the living room. He rubbed his eyes and asked, "Daddy, are you going away again?" The question hit harder than he could ever understand. I knelt down beside him. "No, buddy," I said, holding his little hands. "I'm not going anywhere again. I promise." He smiled sleepily and hugged me. It was small, but it meant everything. It's been 6 months since that day. I moved back to Portland, not into the same house, but nearby. I see the kids every day. Grace spends weekends with me. Ethan comes over to help fix cars in my garage. Emily and we're not back together, at least not officially. But we talk, we laugh, we co-parent, we heal. Sometimes I catch her looking at me the way she used to, and I feel that spark again. Maybe one day we'll find our way back to each other, or maybe just being a family again, even in a different form, is enough. People always ask me if I regret leaving that night, and honestly, I don't know. If I hadn't left, I might never have learned who I really was, or how much damage silence can do. But I do regret not listening. I regret not fighting harder for the people who mattered most. If there's one thing I've learned, it's this. Love doesn't end with betrayal. It changes, it bends, it scars. But sometimes, if you're lucky, it finds a way back home. I visit my dad's grave every month now. I bring Ethan and Grace with me. They sit in the grass while I talk to him. About work, about life, about how proud he'd be of his grandkids. Last time, Ethan looked up at me and asked, "Daddy, is Grandpa in heaven?" "Yeah," I said softly. "He's up there watching us right now." Ethan smiled. Then he knows we're okay now. And for the first time in a very, very long time, I believed it.